How many languages does Elon Musk speak? Elon Musk is a South African businessman known for his companies Tesla and SpaceX, among others, as well. Twitter as well, X, I suppose, these days. So, how many languages does he speak and why does he speak them? Well, the first one that we're going to look at is English. This is the language with which he communicates with the entire world, and it's his first language. Now, Elon Musk isn't from the United Kingdom or the United States. He's from South Africa, where English is one of 11 official languages in the country. He was born in 1971 in Pretoria, which is just about there inside the red circle. Now, as we can see, South Africa is a rainbow nation in terms of its linguistics. And we can see that inside that little red circle, in fact, in most urban areas in South Africa, English is the main language that is spoken. But there are many other languages being spoken around that dot. In terms of its native language status in South Africa, it is the native language of only 9.6% of the population. That equates to around 5 million South Africans who speak English as their first language. However, its status as a second language is very important, as some 14 million more people speak English as a second language in South Africa. This type of English that is spoken in South Africa is unsurprisingly called South African English. And there are various varieties of this kind of accent. Indeed, you can often hear if someone from South Africa has English as their first language, or whether they have, let's say, for example, Xhosa or Zulu as their first language. They often will have a different accent when they speak English, or if they speak Afrikaans, they will have a different accent again. However, in terms of Elon Musk, he has a very slight South African accent, and then it's clear to hear that he has English as his first language. However, when he was 18 in 1989, he moved away from South Africa to Canada, where he spent several years, and then moved to the United States, where he has lived since. And this can certainly be heard in the way that he speaks English, as his South African accent is quite slight, and there is certainly a kind of Californian or American twang to it. So it's a bit of a mixed accent when speaking English and isn't just purely South African. So the first language that he speaks is English. Now, the second language that we know that he speaks, or at least spoke, was Afrikaans. Afrikaans is a language from South Africa, and we know that at the time when he was at school, schools outside of Bantustan regions were either held entirely in English or entirely in Afrikaans. Now, the school that he went to in Pretoria was not an Afrikaans school, which meant that Afrikaans was given as a second language in this school, as one of the compulsory options that had to be learned by students. Now, as we can see around Pretoria, while the city itself is largely English-speaking, to the north in the province, there are many Afrikaans speakers. So it's likely that there were people who he knew who were Afrikaans speakers. Whether he spoke Afrikaans outside of the classroom seems unlikely, however. Afrikaans is the native language of 13.5% of South Africans, which, as you'll note, is a higher percentage than English. It's also, that equates to around 7 million people in South Africa. It's also spoken as a second language by around 10 million South Africans, bringing the total up to 17 million speakers of Afrikaans in South Africa. However, it doesn't seem that Elon Musk was a big fan of learning languages at school. As he says in his biography written by Walter Isaacson, quote, "I just look at it as what grades do I need to get where I want to go? There were compulsory subjects like Afrikaans, and I just didn't see the point of learning that. It seemed ridiculous. I'd get a passing grade, and that was fine." So the question does somewhat remain of whether Elon Musk actually still speaks Afrikaans. He's never been heard speaking the language, as far as I'm aware, in a public context, and given this statement, it seems that he rather learned Afrikaans at school because he had to, and then didn't really use it afterwards. Given the fact that he moved away quite soon afterwards too, there aren't too many Afrikaans speakers in Canada or the United States, and it's quite likely that he doesn't use the language very frequently at all, if ever, to this day. We also know that Musk isn't a massive fan of languages anyway, and thinks they may become obsolete quite quickly.
Yeah, I think you would, in principle, you would be able to communicate very quickly and with far more precision ideas. And language would, I'm not sure what would happen to language. But you could probably, in a situation like this, that you would be able to just, it would be like, kind of like the Matrix. You want to speak a different language, no problem.
Right.
Just wire it, or just download the program.
Phew.
So until he uploads his special Tesla language matrix program, then Elon can speak, obviously, English, and that means that he can speak with 380 million people in their native language, which is around 8%, which are the global population that speak English as their first language. Now, if we are to add Afrikaans, I don't actually know where Afrikaans is in the number of native speakers in the world, as it falls below the sort of top 40, which is what Ethnologue has worked out, which is where these data points come from, by the way. Then we simply add the 7 million people who speak Afrikaans as a first language in South Africa to the figure of English, and then we get a slightly larger number, in which case you can speak to a few more people in South Africa. And if we add Afrikaans, then we might as well add Dutch, right? Because they're pretty similar. And if we add Dutch, then we might as well play the music.